This is the Post Shift Podcast, a raw look at the hospitality industry. Hello, Post Shifters, and welcome to another episode of the Post Shift Podcast. And obviously, I'm your host, Shawn Soole. Today's episode is a very special one. I got to sit down with a good friend and, all-round nice guy, really, Kevin Brauch, the original Thirsty Traveler. If you grew up in the industry in the 2000s, late 1990s, 2000s, even 2010 onwards, you'd know this gentleman as the Thirsty Traveler, who had an epic drinking show. Well, drinking show sounds really bad, but an epic drinking show where he traveled around the world and tasted new things, tried new things, and explained it to you. Gave a story to everything. I fell in love with so many spirits based off his episodes. It's kind of crazy. Luckily enough, over the last decade or so of me being here in Canada, we've become close friends. And really chatting to him, it epitomizes what sort of guy he is. He's just the most down-to-earth, relaxed, chill dude who really inspires, and he really nutted down exactly what the essence of hospitality is for the modern world. So really hope you enjoy this episode. I really enjoyed chatting to him on the phone. Thank you very much for your support, guys. Have a good weekend, and don't work too hard. Bye.
So how about you introduce yourself to all the people at home?
Hey, all the people at home. My name is Kevin Brauch. I'm friend to all animals. I'm better known as the Thirsty Traveler, one of the original hosts of TVO Kids, the wingman to Elton Brown on Iron Chef America, and one of the last guys forever standing in the bar. Although I got to be honest, I haven't done that in a while. So,
well, we're all getting older now. We're all getting older.
Hey, it's not old age. It's a sports injury. It's just a sports injury. I'll be back.
So, you've been in the film and television industry for a substantial amount of years. I won't say how many years, but a substantial amount of years. And, yeah. Well, you started off with TVO Kids.
Yeah.
And how long were you with TVO Kids?
It was my Saturday Night Live and my Second City, my SCTV and my Saturday Night Live. Balled into one.
Yeah, I've watched a few videos now of the old TVO Kids days with you. I think with the anniversary thing, I saw so many videos of the Kevin Brauch doing kids TV. It was kind of hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, I would run to work. I'd go to the gym, 5:30 in the morning. I'd be at my desk at 8. We would go live to air 5 days a week after school from 3:30 until 7. And I wouldn't get out of work until about 9, and I would repeat 5 days in a row. And it was the best thing. Well, it was up until that point in my life, it was the best thing I've ever did. We had to write our own stuff. We had to dress ourselves. We had to make our own props, do our own makeup.
And it was live.
I had to remember that there was always an educational component. So we couldn't just come up with like shitty, lousy characters. We had to be able to validate what we were doing. Like when I had a poetry character, we were teaching kids better English.
Yeah.
You know, and we were teaching Dr. Kev taught hygiene. And, you know, and so it was a phenomenal time. I never thought it would get better until.
Well, and sort of talk the way through, like you did TVO Kids for a number of years. And then how did you make the jump from live kids TV to being, like for me in the early 2000s, before the sort of internet craze, like I'm going to fanboy out a little bit here because I'm not even sure if I've told you the story before, but like you were the epitome of drink education on TV because we didn't have the internet. People like Dale DeGroff and Gary Reagan were just starting to get noticed and writing books. So there wasn't a huge plethora of printed material. So sans internet, no decent cocktail books, and the Thirsty Traveler sort of, for me anyway, sort of kicked off the education of drink culture.
Yeah, you threw me at, before there was no internet.
Yeah, I know. Some of the kids that I talk to these days, the bartenders, like, yeah, you can't just smartphone Google a recipe. Like, if you want to remember a recipe, you have to actually remember it in your head.
Yeah, well, that was, I think that made better bartenders, to be honest with you.
100%.
Because you really had to be indebted. You really had to be indebted at learning your material and knowing and learning the knowledge of what you were doing. Now, I see bartenders sneak away, and I'm okay with it. I see bartenders sneak away to check their phone to make the drink that I'm asking for. I'm not asking for anything outrageous. I mean, the Vesper might be the most outrageous drink I ask for in a bar. And I would rather have them go sneak away and learn how to make a true Vesper than make me what they think is a Vesper, which is horrible. And then we get into that thing. So, but yeah, I mean, think about the guys that know how to make a last word. And people go, what's the last word? I go, Google it.
Yes. And the thing is, like, nobody knew what the last word is until that ancient book got reprinted by Cocktail Kingdom and someone found it.
Yeah, and I remember Christine Sismondo, who's from Toronto, in love with tales, and she's a historian, and she's a cocktail historian, and she would go on about it when I really didn't know what it was. I had known the name, but I wouldn't be able to make one for anyone back in the day. But to get back to your question, like the jump from kids TV into my professional, I'd always put myself through school working in bars and restaurants. And I didn't work in the best places. I worked in high volume places, not chains, but we were making very simplistic cocktails back then. We didn't have cocktail culture. Before the internet, there was no cocktail culture.
Yeah.
There were no cell phones. Basically we were riffing on classics. And then there would be a couple of modern day things. But it was pretty lean. It was 2-3 ingredient cocktails, almost more like glorified mixed drinks, right?
And there'd be a dusty bottle of Angostura bitters somewhere in the back of the cupboard.
Nobody would know what it was for. and for some reason, some guy suckered the bar owner into buying a bottle of Galliano because it looked good, but it was never open. So I'd always work in bars and restaurants and really loved. I started in the kitchen. I was in a kitchen with 16 Sri Lankans and me. And they would talk in Sri Lankan and they treated me very poorly. But I really wanted that. I really wanted that grounding. I really wanted that education. I wanted that as part of my DNA, my makeup. And then one day, this was the first day I ever worked bar. And it was the old spaghetti factory, okay? The manager, the MOD, walks in to the kitchen. It's a Saturday night. And he's like, Sri Lankan white guy. And he goes, you, come with me. And I get called out of the kitchen and I get taken to the bar because the bartender called in too hungover to work, which in those days was almost acceptable.
It's the norm. Yeah.
And he said, behind the bar, here are all the recipes that we have. And they were like, rye and ginger, vodka soda, gin and tonic. And he goes, but push everybody to the cable car drink, which is the old spaghetti's specialty cocktail. And it was basically a Shirley Temple with vodka. And they got to keep the glass.
Okay.
Wine came in two styles, boxed red and boxed white. There was no wine culture either. That's how old I am, Shawn. And that's how sports injured I am, Shawn. And and as hard as that first night was, it was a great success in my mind, and it was a better stage for me for who Kevin Brauch is, and I got to interact and engage with people. Not that the Sri Lankans that yelled at me every night in the kitchen, weren't great in their own right. But it was a better dynamic for my energy. And that's where I really got involved in, cocktail culture and learning what I'm doing. And I did that when I was in the kitchen, There were great books written, a lot of cookery books, a lot of recipe books. There wasn't too many people, Tony's being one of the seminal books where we learned what life was really like back there. But I tried to really learn my trade and become a better bartender. And again, it wasn't anything fancy. I just got good at the repetition. I really made people feel welcome. The hospitality side of things is really key to me. It might be the most important thing You know, if somebody asked me to make a cocktail for them, and I still get behind the wood a couple times a year, you know, or I'll do a weekend or I'll do an event. And if somebody, you know, asks me for a drink that I can't remember or I've never heard of before, I will make that time with them while they explain to me what they're looking for the best time I possibly can, because it's the interaction which goes along with that as much as it is what's in the glass.
100%.
Shawn, I would make water taste good for you.
So how did you get picked up as a thirst? Were you approached to be the Thirsty Traveler, or was there a casting call, or
no?
How did it sort of play out?
The show was called The Epicurean Traveler, and it was it won a pitch competition at the Banff Television Film Festival, which happens every June in Banff, Alberta, up at the Fairmont, and it's a pretty significant television festival. And this small show out of Calgary won the 30-second elevator pitch, and it was for Food Network Canada's first developed created show for Food Network. Up until then, everything was acquired from other networks, from the American network, from other channels, right? So we were the very first show that was made by Food Network Canada, and they were having trouble. It was co-produced by the Food Network in the United States, but the host had to come from Canada, and they were having a bit of a time trying to find someone. I was working at TV Ontario and the CBC, and I was hosting a gardening show at the time. So I had my hands in a lot of pies, and I was pretty well known from PBO and the gardening show and whatnot, and knew a lot of people in the industry. And I got a phone call saying, this guy is going to call you from Alberta in a couple of minutes. Will you take his call? I'm going like, I don't got time for this. Sure, I'll take his call. And I get a call from a guy who has The Epicurean Traveler. It's his show. And he goes, I'm gonna do a little thing for you right now. He goes, okay, so you're me and I'm Brian, okay?
Okay.
And Bring, you answer the phone. Bring.
Hi. Kevin Brauch speaking.
Hello, Kevin. How are you? It's Brian from Calgary. So we got this show called The Thursday Traveler. And I heard Thursday Traveler. And in my quick thinking mind, I thought 3-day weekend trip. You're right. You leave, take off Friday from work and you're back in time for work on Monday, but it's a 3-day trip to like Vegas or Niagara or Chicago or New York City, wherever, right? I was like, oh my God, that's a fucking great idea. And then he didn't say anything. I thought, oh, I swore. Oh no, I've ruined it. He goes, no, it's not the Thursday. And he speaks like this. I swear to God. I spent 7 years on the road with this guy. He's speaking like this everywhere. He goes, it's not the Thursday Traveler. It's the Thirsty Traveler. And he broke my brain. I was like, that's better than the Thursday Traveler. Maybe I'll do the Thursday Traveler after the Thirsty Traveler. And I was going like, is it a drinking show, Brian? Yes. And I flew out to Calgary, and we met, and we had a nice enough meeting, and the guy seemed really nice. And I went back to Toronto, and I was thinking I was going to say no to it because I really believed in what I was doing at the CBC. It was also in the children's department, but it was more for teenagers.
Yeah.
And we had this really radical kind of plot twist, and there was finally internet. Shawn.
Yes.
The internet was finally invented. And we were developing this conceptual show where you couldn't just watch the TV show. You had to go to the internet to find out more. And you couldn't just go to the internet and play the games and look at the things. You had to watch the TV show. It was pretty ahead of its time.
Let's put this in context for the kids listening. Like, when you say the internet was around, we're still talking about
It wasn't the sexy thing that it is today.
It was dial-up that cost you $1.50 a minute that you were on it.
Well, I was working at the nation's broadcaster, so for me it was free. I remember it was on my first business card, and people went, "What is HTTP www.cbc.ca mean?" I was like, I don't really know. I just do it when I'm at work. So it was a happy accident. It landed in my arms. It was a bit of a lottery win. I said no to it. Bruce Adele, who is the president of Food Network in the United States, flew up to Canada, convinced me to do it, and we went on the road to Scotland. We cut our teeth on Scottish whiskey, man. That's probably one of the hardest silos in the world of spirits that you could choose to tackle. But we went there, and I realized that I knew a heck of a lot more than the production team did and than the research binder did. And basically, I'm not patting myself on the back, and I'm not trying to sound like a prick, but I took control of creative for the show. And it made a lot more sense to me. They were cooking a recipe for the first time from a tablet, okay? You know, you've done that before. We've all done that before, right? I want to make gnocchi. I've never made gnocchi. I'll look up Grandma's Best Gnocchi, and now I'm reading every line like it's a quiz in school, right?
Yeah.
That's how they developed their research for this show to figure out where we wanted to go. They picked a pretty decent path, I'll give them that, but they didn't know anything, and they didn't have the language, and they didn't have the understanding. So I sort of really took over that aspect of the show, and under me and my buddy Brad, who shot every piece of video and digital that we did on Thirsty, we made it work, you know. I'm spectacularly proud of that show, and I am highly responsible for its success. I can say that now. I mean, everybody that worked on it is responsible for its success, but, you know, I am the thirsty traveler.
You definitely are. And how many seasons was that on for?
We did 60 episodes. We call it 7 or 8 seasons. You know, a couple of the years we did a few less because of other commitments. My commitment to Iron Chef America would get in the way sometimes. Sometimes funding got in the way when we shoot a few less, and then the last year we shot a couple of specials at the end just to bump ourselves up. But it was a great, you know, 8 years of traveling the world. We traveled through the War on Terror, avian bird flu, SARS, the shoe bomber, liquid and gel bans.
Yeah.
Like we flew through all of that like champions, man. Like 256 days in 1 year. I think it was maybe 2005, maybe 2006. 256 days on the road. Like that's rock band numbers.
Yes, that is.
And I think I wouldn't have had it any other way. It was amazing. And you're still doing things like Tales of the Cocktail, and you're still doing things like World Gourmet Summit in Singapore.
Yeah.
You know, and you know all those other things. I mean, I come home, you know. Do you remember those things called answering machines? I'd come home and there'd be this little thing sitting on my desk, and if I was lucky, there'd be a 1. But like all my friends, my hockey team, my crew, they just gave up calling me because they knew I would never be home. That was kind of one of the sad parts. I mean, there were so many good parts. There were 3 or 4 sad things about it, but I would never take it back. I would only bring it back.
So what would you say was, I know this is going to be a tough question to answer. What was your favorite episode ever?
Hang on a second. I'm just going to open a beer. Hang on. Did you get that?
I did get that. So what was your favorite episode ever?
You know, if you ask me tomorrow, the answer is going to change probably. There's like 2 episodes of the 60 that I really didn't care for, that were real, that they were uninspired. We didn't line up with the right people. But in terms of the great episodes, I mean, the 2 shows that we did in Germany, because that's the birthplace of my dad and my family, those got to be right up there. Russia was insanity, pure drunken insanity with the Russian mafia, with Barney Rubel, our security guard. He looked like Barney Rubble from the Flintstones. We called him Barney Rubel. And he walked around with his little Adidas bag. You know those old fake leather Adidas bags?
Yeah.
And he would always stand about 20 feet from us. And I figured he was like a security guard or something, but he was so small and Barney Rubble-like, you know? Like, you figure he'd be the worst security guard ever. And when I got frustrated, I'd go talk to him, and I'd call him Barney. And I know his name wasn't Barney, but I never knew his name. And he'd go, "Good morning, Kevin. I love Canada. I love hockey. thirsty travel, let's drink, Nasovia. And he would never have a drink with us. And one day I went up and Barney, I go, what's in the bag? And he goes, huh? I go, Barney, what's in the bag? Adidas. And he goes, all day I dream of sexy thing. Something like that. You know, the all day I dream about sex.
Yes.
And I go, Barney, what's in the bag? And I go, come on, show. He goes, okay, I show. And he had 3 handguns in the Adidas bag. So finally I talked to one of his Russian co-workers or bosses, and I said, so Barney's got guns. Is that for us? And he goes, no, it's for the gear. It's for the camera equipment. It's not for you. So apparently we weren't being guarded. It was just the expensive film kit we had with us. I mean, Russia was insane. One of my most unlikely targets was Taiwan. I absolutely love Taipei and Taiwan. It was incredible. Never expected to like that. I always say I would go and disappear in the grill. I love Jamaica. I really am proud of that episode with Joy Spence down at Appleton.
Yeah.
And you know, we were in the cane fields, and we almost got torched. We almost got caught on fire. They like it's stupid how you get in the way of somebody doing their work, and it could cost you your life. It was incredible, and it was scary. We laugh about it now, and we left that little bit in the show, and you could almost think, oh, they just faked that. It was not fake. It was real. Like, I never faked a drink on that show. There's a National Post article going, you know, he really drinks a lot. Is he really drinking, or is he faking? It's like our show. I said, if I'm going to like go around the world and travel, when I got friends with shitty jobs back in Canada, you know, working in a bank every day, not getting to see anything. I'm getting paid to travel and drink for a living. I said, I'm never going to fake anything. You know, if I did, I would tell you. If, you know, I didn't finish all the plates, but I tried everything that was put in front of me.
I think it was the Peru episode. Was it Peru that really knocked you about? And there was a couple of times where you were like, no, I'm not drinking this.
I lost 11 pounds in 3 days. I think you just did that in Singapore. Didn't you do that in Singapore last month?
I did do that last month. Yes. Keep with the local food. Don't go to a grocery store.
Well, see, I mean, but you know how hard that stuff can hit, and you were there doing a professional job, you know, and it really knocks the life out of you.
Yeah.
You know, I kept going through it. I fought back. The producer on that show, me and her, we never really saw eye to eye. We had respect for each other, but we didn't see eye to eye. And she was going, from now on, mister, until you get better, you're drinking water, and we'll just pretend it's Pisco. And I was like, fuck you, Susan. You don't tell me what to do. I said, if you guys don't care enough to give me 2 or 3 days rest to recover, I'm doing this my way. You know, and she was like, and, you know, that was a noise. That wasn't words. That was just a noise. But again, that was an incredible experience. You know, going up to Cusco, where, you know, you're at 9,000 altitude, and going into a family's home that had never had, you know, Caucasian people in it before. And the woman puts on her wedding dress from 22 years ago. So, because she's inviting us into her home, and she's got like 100 guinea pigs running around, right? Because it's dinner. And I was the honored guest, so I got to pick my own guinea pig. So I had to chase a guinea pig around a compound and figure out which one I was going to eat. I bad for the slow one.
I think my favorite episode, and I don't think it was my favorite episode purely because of what happened, but was the Greek ouzo episode.
Yeah.
And that was because ouzo is one of those flavors that, like everybody knows, licorice is a love-hate flavor. Like, people either love it or they hate it.
Totally.
And it was one of those episodes that as soon as I realized, and I should know this is a true 100% story, as soon as I realized how ouzo was made after watching your episode, because I worked a lot, I still do, but like back in the day, I work a lot. I remember just binge watching Thirsty, because I think when I started watching it like 2003, 2004, it was on at like 2 a.m. in the morning. So I'd finish up work, come home, and I'd have Thirsty Traveler on TiVo. And this is before we ever met, but I remember the Uzo episode, and as soon as I watched that episode, I was like, I need to try this the way I just watched it done and all that sort of stuff. And I shit you not, I would actually go out to bars and start drinking Uzo and water. Would be my before going out on the town.
Yeah.
Uzo and water in a tall glass, like 1 part to 3 parts, and that would be what I would drink. And it was so nerdy and so ridiculous, and all my friends thought I was a freaking absolute turd. But that's what I would drink before we went out drinking. I'd go to a bar and order Uzo and water.
Well, we were well placed on the network, right? So we were on late night TV, and that's where I think a lot of the industry people that were coming home after, you know, a night working in a bar on shift and they were just channel surfing, you know, this was sort of, it's not like you want to wear your work home, but it was a nice compliment to, you know, your existence if you're working around the same base materials like wine, beer, or spirits. We were also placed Thursday night prime time in Ontario anyway. And this is, you have some kindred spirits at the university. They did go to the University of Waterloo. I met this group of about 5 guys. They came to see me when I was doing a stage performance, a stage lecture one day. They would, when they were in the dorms at University of Waterloo, they would read the TV guide. Where did the TV guide go, eh? We're so old. So they would read the TV guide. They would see what the subject material was for Thirsty Traveler. It would say, Uzo. This week, Kevin travels to Greece and discovers Uzo. They would go to the LCBO in Ontario. They would buy Uzo, and they would drink Uzo and watch the show from 8 till 8:30 on a Thursday night before going to the pub.
That's
so they would do the same thing that you were doing, you geek, but they did it stupidly wrong because they would do shots. Every time I drank on the show, they would drink a shot. It was a drinking game. When I found this out, I was like, dude, you know I'm not doing this all in 22 minutes. Like, this is done over like 7, 8, 9 days. So I personally, after I heard this, I was completely flattered. I thought they were a bunch of jackasses. But I was complimented. I watched a couple of episodes, and you know, the shows take on patterns. The editors put shows together in kind of similar ways, right? Some shows you notice, right? There's a sunrise and then shit happens. And at the end of the scene before they go to commercials, there's a sunset. Oh, I'm talking about Thirsty Travelers.
Yeah.
But throughout a 22-minute show, I would drink on average between 32 and 35 times. So I don't know that they could really keep up, but they would finish the bottle surely before the end of the show. But they would say, we drank. Every time you drank, we drank. And I'm going like, you guys are fucking stupid, but I love you for it. And they go, then we go to the pub. And one week they wouldn't let us in. So we blamed you.
The Thirsty Traveler made me do it.
Yeah, I made you do it. So we never practiced. Like, we weren't like some of the shows that followed us, you know, and people talk about that. You know, there were shows like Three Sheets.
Yeah.
And the Cocktail Kings and stuff like that, you know, and they all found their own balance. I don't think, you know, Three Sheets set out to accomplish what we were trying to do. You know, we tried to tell a story of a country via its national wine, beer, or spirit.
Yeah.
Right. And along the way, we would learn about the history of it, the culture of the drink. We would see how it's made. We would see how it's paired with food or used in recipes. And then there would always be like a happy fun thing that we would do, you know, running with the bulls or some game or some festival, Oktoberfest, you know. So we really tried to tell a heartfelt, passionate story. I've been around the world, dude. I know you've been around the world. And, you know, we all agree on these certain things. We agree on a 7-day calendar, right?
Yeah.
We agree on basically a 5 or 6 day work week.
Ish.
And our time off, we all have to do laundry, do groceries, wash the car, and we want to hang out with our friends and family and maybe cook some food and play some games and have some drinks and sing some songs, right? Like, it's so in those ways, we are so much more the same than we are different.
Yeah.
We know the things that make us different. We were focusing on the things that made us the same. Yeah, and we had language barriers. We had language barriers with a lot of the people that I got to sit down with for a day or a half a day, and it didn't matter. We found a way to communicate, and we found a way to represent Canada and I'll say North America very proudly in parts of the world that at the time weren't very enamored with the United States.
Yeah.
They weren't very enamored with the Bush administration. And that made life very difficult for us in a lot of instances. But, over the course of a couple hours, like in Italy, we would see really peasant wine put down on the table when we arrived. And somehow these people agreed to have a film crew from America, even though we're Canadian, in their home. And they saw how nice we were and how gracious we were and how easy it was. And I would see bottles of wine sometimes switched out for better bottles of wine. You can tell when a shit bottle of wine is on the table. And when somebody goes, oh, my God, these guys are really nice. We can't serve them this. They know what they're talking about. And they're super nice.
Out of all the countries
what's that?
Out of all the countries you've gone to, which is the one that you wish you would have visited? Is there a country that you haven't visited that you wish you had?
Like visited since we've done the show, or that we could have included on the show?
That you could have included on the show.
Oh, I mean, there are a few donut holes for sure. I mean, I would have loved to done Georgian wine in the state of Georgia, the former Russian Republic.
Mm-hmm. I explained to my wife the other day where Georgia was in Europe. It was not a highlight of our conversation, that's for sure.
I've just recently met a guy and sat down with him who is working very closely with the wines of Georgia, and he's a archaeologist, and they're trying to discover the age of Georgian wine and when winemaking first began there. And it's a really fascinating story, but he brought me a bottle. And we don't really get Georgian wine here in Canada. We get it sometimes or in some provinces. Man, this bottle of wine, it was about $17, if you did the exchange rate on it. It was gorgeous. Yeah. It was gorgeous. Like, they've been making wine longer than we've been making wine. I would have loved to have done Croatia, Zagreb. And, we did Tasmania, we did New Zealand, we did Australia, we did China, we did, Taiwan and Japan, and we did all of Europe. We did Canada and the United States. We did Mexico. I'm trying to think. Like, I think those two would be up there at the top of the list. I can't really right now. I it's going to come to me as soon as we're done. And
did you actually ever do a New Orleans episode with all the times you gone down the tails?
Rectified whiskey. We were there 2 weeks before that. That's actually how I think my involvement with Tales the Cocktail began. We were there 2 weeks before Hurricane Katrina.
Oh, okay.
We were doing a story on rectified whiskey that came down the river, the Mississippi River, and it would cook on the boat, right? It would stew on the boats because of the heat in the barrels, and it would arrive in New Orleans, and it was off, right? It was really caramelized and cooked. And what they would do is they would add fruit, and they would add lemon juice and orange juice, and try and make it almost into like a sangria with liquor, right? But that's sort of where rectified whiskey was born, and that's like things like Southern Comfort, right? So our episode was largely on Southern Comfort and the big the crawfish bakes that they have on down there. But we were there 2 weeks before Katrina. Katrina hit the following year. I went down there as an ambassador of goodwill for Tales of the Cocktail. I did a session, and that was sort of where my connection was made. And really so proud to be a part of that festival when it was happening with Ann and Paul, and how hard they had to work to get something off the ground in such a depleted area. Even a year later, when I was down there, I got driven through the 9th precinct. I think that was the hardest hit. And learning about the markings on the houses, like, body, X, nobody, like, it was horrible. I couldn't imagine, because the houses aren't that strong to begin with.
Yeah.
you know.
Well, I think my first time down there was like 2010, 2011, and there was still massive swaths of the city that was still
never recovered.
That never recovered, like huge swaths. Like you drive out to Cuba now, and it's nice to drive out to Cuba.
Yeah. No, for sure. And I think I think it hit 2006, and I was down there 2007 was my first real year of participation with Tails. And I hit it every year for 6 years. And I remember the first year that I missed it because it's such an important cultural moment for not only the people in New Orleans and Louisiana, but for our industry and you know, just in general for learning and for connections. You know what it's like. You know, some people you don't see at all, and you see them. I saw you last year at Tails, and then I see you next year at Tails, and it's like no time has passed between us, you know, and there's so many relationships like that. And that's ultimately, I think, what drives the heart of hospitality. You know, you work in a bar and you know that you're going to see one guy every single day, and he's your every single day guy. And you know you got a week guy, and you know you got maybe a monthly or a twice monthly dude or woman. And you know you got that once a year guy, you know, and they're all the same kind of in your book, right? And you know how exciting it is when you know that guy is coming to Toronto or to Vancouver or Victoria for convention, and he's always going to come back to your bar. You know, and those moments are magic.
Well, and that's the thing is like, I think the very first time we met face to face was maybe 2007.
That was in Toronto, right?
It was in Toronto, and I was there with Dean Neils and a few other people. I think I was there for Barmetrics, and that was the first time we met. And I could have easily, I fanboyed pretty hard because coming from Australia to Canada, sans like real internet or Facebook, social media and stuff didn't exist. Like you have your things. And when I met Dean in New York, I think, and he took me to Milk and Honey, which was like one of the. And again, I fanboyed for Dean because I started in Flair. So all of a sudden I've got a guy who basically taught me Flair via VHS tape, taking me out to Milk and Honey in New York. And then,
I only have Dean's DVDs. I'm not that hardcore. I'm not the fanboy that I have his VHS.
I still have my very, very, very first ever Flair Co model that I bought in 2002, 2003. So,
I still have my very first Shawn Soole muddler.
You do. So I think we met at a pub, and it was a pretty brief account, but we exchanged numbers. And I'm not sure if it was the same trip or it was the next trip I came to Toronto. That's right, because I came back to Toronto in 2009 to do Cityline TV. And we caught up. And the one thing I always said, like, you never... As a person that's been on TV for 8 years, like more than 8 years, and the Thirsty Traveler and stuff like that, like you've never had an ego. You're always super, like we went out drinking, like you took me around to bars, like we went to the Bar Chef, we went to Harvard Room back in the day. We had a beer down on Queen Street, I think. I remember I had to ghost you at Harvard Room because my wife called to say goodnight because of the time difference, obviously. And, I remember this verbatim. She's like, do not let Kevin Brauch take you out till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning when you have to be on morning TV at 6 a.m. And as soon as she said that, she's like, we just sent you, you just took yourself to Toronto. She's like, go home. And I think I walked into Harvard Room, gave you a hug, and I was like, yeah, I have to go. And I went back to my hotel and slept because I think the night before we teared one off, and I woke up extremely hungover the next day. And I was going to do a back-to-back with you and then be on morning TV. I was like, no, I can't let that happen.
Well, it was also your night to buy, right? So that's why I always had to, and you just you left me hanging when it was really your turn to buy. So, not very cool, dude.
It was not that bad at all.
You always do what the girl tells you to do. You always do what the girl tells you to do.
I made up for that in Vegas.
Yeah, there you go. But like as much as we do this, and as much as the hijinks and shenanigans are almost like a byproduct of it, you know, like we do live this industry, we do live this sport, we do live like the art of hospitality. I'll clean up somebody else's bar. I'll make adjustments if I'm sitting on, the guest side of the wood. We have great fun in what we do, and some nights, we're more bad than we are good. That's life. But I think if you're passionate about it and you come at it from the right ways, how many people go, "Why are you fat?"
Yeah.
I'm going, because I like to think I can balance it. I can manage it. It's been out of control sometimes. It's been out of management sometimes. It's been mismanaged sometimes, but, and I don't know what I'm trying to say really is here. I love the art of hospitality. It's a noble art. To serve is no different than being like a doctor or a nurse, and you got to really look at it with an open mind. But I'm not trying to be facetious. I really, restaurants or places where you could rest developed, right, based on how far a horse could ride over the course of a day. You would find yourself at a place, and the inn might be full, or there was no menu card really. You would eat what they had. You could rest your horse. You could have a rest in a bed yourself or on straw or whatever it was. People would invite you into their place. That's where all of this sort of first came from. If you really want to get sexy and get really zen about it, that's where it all happened. There was no "please wait to be seated" sign, right? Which I abhor. I would love to see the sign say, like, "Welcome in," or "Good to see you again," or "Hey family." We all know what to do in restaurants. We're sophisticated enough. We get it. I'm not going to just go sit down anywhere. I'll wait at the door and be welcomed by someone, and there should be someone there to welcome you. And, that good-natured introduction and conversation should flow into the next theme, which is being seated, and then having somebody come over and go, "Thanks for being here, man. What can I get you guys to drink? You look parched, Are you eating tonight?" All of that stuff should be delivered in a positive way, not in a, "Oh, hell no, now I got to serve you too?" Huh. And it's not an easy job. So that's why we have to be the best at our game, right? I understand why you went home that night, because if you couldn't make it to City Line, they would have called me to fill in. Because I've done City Line too before,
Well, you are the thirsty traveler.
There you go.
And I think on that note, my friend, I think that was a ton of things for the young bartenders I hope are listening to this and can really digest and see the true pure nature of this industry and why we do it. It's not for the cocktail recipes or the media or the marketing or the Instagram post. It's really about you really put it into good verbiage on the pure nature of hospitality.
I think you need to know your bottles. You can't just be able to balance the bottle on the back of your hand or flip it around your head. And I'm not knocking any of that. But you need to know the bottle. If you're looking for something to talk to other than sports or the weather, you can tell the story of the cocktail, why you personally like it or not. You don't even have to talk. Like there's show and there's engagement. There's all of those things. You got to hit your measures. Every drink needs to be made proudly. You can make the best drink in the world. If it's in a dirty glass, you haven't done your job. You didn't polish before shifts. There's so many little steps. And it is a big commitment, because every single night of the year when people are out celebrating a holiday, a birth, a death, an engagement, a house purchase, every Friday and Saturday night, there are people working their ass off till 3 or 4 in the morning, right? Going home stinky and sweaty with sore knees, sore backs, sore hips. There are guys in the kitchen, they're growing under fluorescent lights. Those guys have bear clamps on their legs. And you really got to be committed to doing it. It used to be an industry where you could hide and make some good coin.
Yeah.
And now I don't think it is so much. You can still make some good coin, but I think you really have to do a bit more now to be successful in this industry, or it will kick you out, or it will eat you up. That's my belief. And I want to see, more education in the industry. I want to see more training. I want to see more support top down, from the management, from the reps, the distributors, the breweries, everything, to make it a stronger industry, to make it a better industry. We spend way too much money on mediocre service and mediocre experiences. And what am I trying to say? You just set up, probably Singapore's next it spot, right?
It'll get there.
It's different over there too, right? It's culturally around the world, the way we go out and how we go out and what we expect in terms of levels of service is very different around the world.
Very different. It's a bit of a culture shock, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's a whole other conversation, and to know it and then to come back and you kind of go, what? I don't get it.
Yeah.
So if you're in it, try and be in it for the long haul if you can, but every day you go to work positive, the shift finishes faster, everybody has a better experience, and you'll probably walk home with a bit more money in your pocket.
Oh, and on that note, that will be the end of the podcast.
There we go. The end. Well, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you very much, Shawn Soole.
Thank you very much, buddy. I'll chat to you really soon, okay?
All right. Take care, man.
Have a good afternoon, buddy. Love you too, buddy.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Post Shifters. I hope you enjoyed that episode. If you're listening, whatever platform you're on, give me a good rating, subscribe, listen along. I'm going to keep going. I really enjoy sitting down with people and learning where they're from, what they did, and how they got to where they were. So if you love it, give me a good 5 stars. If you don't, give me 1 and I'll try harder.